Today we are answering the question at hand. How do you value commercial real estate? By the end of this video, not only will you master the 3 proven methods professionals use to determine the true value of any commercial property, but you'll also learn how to spot the crucial details most investors miss when analyzing properties, from hidden capital expenses to market dynamics that could make or break your investment.
One of the nation's top real estate investors. Within only 7 short years, Dave Seymour has transacted millions of dollars of real estate and has become one of the nation's leading experts in both residential and commercial transactions.
Every commercial property has a price tag, but how do you know if that price tag is right? Well, today I'm going to show you exactly how professionals determine the true value of any commercial property, not just the asking price, but how to dive deeper. You see, commercial real estate valuation doesn't need to be complicated. At its core, it's about understanding what makes a property valuable, from the income it generates to its location and condition. And once you grasp these fundamentals, you can value any commercial property with confidence. In this video, I'm walking you through the 3 proven methods that professionals use to value commercial properties. You'll learn when to use each method and why. So let's start with the most important method, the income approach. This is what professionals use most often, especially for properties that generate rental income. The income approach focuses on one key question: how much money does this property generate? We look at 2 main numbers here, the income coming in and the expenses going out. First, we calculate the gross potential income. That's all the rent you could collect if the property was fully leased at market rates. But properties aren't always fully leased, so we subtract vacancy and collection losses to get the effective gross income. From there, we subtract all operating expenses like property taxes, insurance, utilities, maintenance, property management. Now, left is what's called the net operating income, or NOI. This is crucial because it tells us how much money the property actually puts in your pocket each year. Now, here's where cap rates come in. A cap rate is simply the net operating income divided by the property's value. For example, if a property generates, say, $100,000 in NOI and sells for $1 million, well, that's a 10% cap rate. But cap rates do more than just math. They tell us about risk. Lower cap rates usually mean lower risk, and higher cap rates usually mean higher risk. For example, let's take 2 office buildings, one downtown with stable long-term tenants and another in a developing area with shorter leases. The downtown building might sell at a 5% cap, while the other could be at an 8% cap. The difference tells us that the market sees more risk in the secondary property. But we can't rely on the income approach alone. That's why professional valuations also use the sales comparison approach. Now, this method looks at what similar properties have recently sold for in the market. When using the sales comparison approach, though, we need to be specific about what makes properties similar. We look at location, size, age, condition, and the quality of the tenants. No 2 properties are exactly alike, so we make careful adjustments for these differences. So let's break down this example. Let's say you're valuing a 50,000 square foot office building. You find a similar property that just sold, but it's 60,000 square feet. Now you'll need to adjust the sales price to account, obviously, for the different size. The same goes for better locations, newer construction, or stronger tenants. The 3rd method we use is the cost approach. This method answers a simple question: what would it cost to build this property today? We start with the land value, add construction costs, and then subtract for depreciation and obsolescence. The cost approach method is particularly useful for special purpose properties or new construction. Think about properties like hospitals, churches, or schools, properties that don't have many comparable sales and might not generate typical rental income. What makes commercial property valuation powerful is that we often use all 3 of these methods together. Each method gives us a different perspective on value. The income approach shows us earning potential. The sales comparison tells us what buyers are actually paying. And the cost approach gives us a replacement value benchmark. But knowing these methods is just the start. The market can change quickly, and these changes directly impact how we value commercial properties. Take market vacancy rates, for example. If competing properties in your area suddenly have more vacant space, well, that affects your property's value in two ways. First, it might mean that you'll have more vacancies in your own building, and second, you might need to lower rents to keep tenants. Both directly impact your NOI. Interest rates also play a huge role. When interest rates go up, buyers typically need higher cap rates to make their investments work. This means property values often go down when interest rates rise. It's simple math. If buyers need a higher return, they'll pay less for the same net operating income. Now, let's look at supply and demand. You see new construction in your market? Well, if you see it, it means more competition. More competition usually means slower rent growth or even rent decreases in some cases. But if there's not much new construction and demand is strong, well, rents will tend to rise, pushing property values higher. The local economy matters just as much. Any major employers moving in or moving out will affect it. New infrastructure projects being planned. All these factors affect how much tenants will pay for space and therefore your property's value. Now, there are some common mistakes people make when valuing commercial property. The biggest one is overly optimistic income projections. Just because rents grew 5% annually for the past few years, that doesn't mean they'll keep growing at that rate. Another mistake is ignoring capital expenses. Sure, your building might be running fine now, but what about that 20-year-old roof? Or the HVAC system that's near the end of its life? These future expenses need to be factored into your valuation. Lease terms also affect a property value significantly. A property with long-term leases to strong tenants is worth more than the same property with short-term leases or weaker tenants. But you need to look closely at those leases. Are there any rent escalations, expense pass-throughs, early termination options? Each detail impacts value. Now, understanding these concepts is one thing. Applying them correctly, well, that's another. The key is using a systematic approach, one that considers all the factors we've discussed. Start by gathering all your property information. You need current rent rolls, operating statements, tax bills, and maintenance records. But don't just look at this year's numbers. Look back at least 3 years to spot trends and identify any unusual expenses. Next, study your market carefully. What are similar properties renting for? What's the current vacancy rate? Are any new buildings under construction in the area? This makes research its critical component because it helps you validate your assumptions. So let's walk through a real-world example of how to apply all three valuation methods to the same property. Take a typical suburban office building. Using the income approach, we first analyze the rent roll and expenses, but we also need to compare those rents to the market. Are they above or are they below market rates? If they're above market, we might need to adjust our future income projections. For the sales comparison approach, we'd look for similar office buildings that sold recently, but we also need to understand why those properties sold at their specific prices. Was it a distressed sale? Was there something unique about the buyer or the seller? These factors can significantly impact whether the sale is truly comparable or not. The cost approach might tell us something entirely different. Maybe construction costs have risen sharply, making new buildings much more expensive to build. This could mean existing properties are more valuable because they cost less than new construction. Speaking of costs, let's talk about how to analyze operating expenses properly. Many buyers focus too much on income and not enough on expenses. You need to compare your property's expenses to similar properties. If your expenses are much lower, that could be a red flag. Are you deferring maintenance? If they're much higher, is there an opportunity to maybe reduce them? Property taxes deserve special attention. They're often one of the largest expenses and they can change dramatically after a sale. Many jurisdictions reassess properties based on the sale price. This means your tax bill could increase significantly, impacting your net operating income and consequently your value. So let's talk about analyzing your property's position in the market. Now, this goes beyond just basic location analysis. You need to understand your property's competitive advantages and its weaknesses. What makes tenants choose your building over others? Maybe it's the floor plan efficiency or parking ratio or access to public transit. These features directly impact your property's value. Think about an office building with a coffee shop or in a restaurant maybe on the ground floor. These amenities can help you attract and retain office tenants above, potentially commanding higher rents. You also need to understand how your building compares to modern standards in terms of its physical condition. Are your ceiling heights competitive? How about your electrical capacity? As tenant needs evolve, older buildings can become functionally obsolete without the proper updates. Environmental factors are becoming increasingly important too. Energy efficiency, green building certifications, and sustainability features can significantly impact value. Many tenants now require these features, and buildings without them may become outdated a lot quicker. Another crucial fact about market analysis is that you need to look beyond your immediate area. What's happening in nearby submarkets? That can affect your property's value. If a neighboring area is seeing major improvements or new development, that could either help or hurt your property's value, depending on how it positions you in the market. Understanding these dynamics helps you make better assumptions in your valuation. Now remember, we're not just calculating current value, we're trying to predict future value as well, future performance. The more you understand about your market position, the more accurate your projections will be. Now, let's talk about how to validate your property valuation, because getting the numbers right is critical, and a small mistake in your assumptions can mean millions in value difference. First, you need to check your revenue assumptions against market data. Are your projected rents in line with similar properties? Don't just look at asking rents, dig deeper to find actual lease rates. There's often a difference between what landlords ask for and what tenants actually pay. Your expense projections need just as much scrutiny. Now compare your operating expenses per square foot to similar buildings, and if your numbers are significantly different there, you need to understand why. Sometimes what looks like efficient operations is actually deferred maintenance that will cost more in the long run. Here's a pro tip. Create different scenarios for your valuation. Run your numbers with conservative assumptions, moderate assumptions, and optimistic assumptions. This gives you a value range rather than just a single number. It's more realistic, and it helps you understand how sensitive your value is to different factors. Also, look at your capital expense budget carefully. Are you setting aside enough for future replacements? Many buyers will underestimate these costs. A good rule of thumb is to look at the age and the condition of major systems. That will be your roof, heating and air conditioning, elevators. These create a realistic replacement schedule. And finally, always ask yourself, does this value make sense? Sometimes the numbers can all add up, but the final value just still feels wrong. That's when you need to step back and look at the bigger picture. What would a reasonable buyer actually pay for this property? What's the story that supports this value? Remember, commercial real estate valuation is both an art and a science. The methods we've covered give you the science. They give you the numbers, the systematic way to analyze value. But you also need to develop the art, the judgment that comes from experience and market knowledge. Anyway, thanks for watching. Now you understand how professionals value commercial real estate, from the core methods to the crucial details that make the difference between a good valuation and a great one. And if you got some value out of the video, be sure to like and subscribe. You know what to do. Click the buttons and the bells and do what you need to do to get notified when I post a new video. And I'll see you in the next one. And you can access it right over here. Take care.